Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice Podcast. The topic is why reading books makes you smarter, improve English fluency. You know, we live in this world that's just dominated by fragmented digital media, right? Quick scrolls, bite-sized videos, or kind of absorbing info in these tiny, almost chaotic bursts. It feels a bit like an addiction sometimes to just immediacy. But what if the most powerful thing you could do for your learning, for your mind, actually involves slowing down, picking up a real book, committing to a long story, or some in-depth nonfiction? So today we're doing a deep dive into something really foundational, especially for serious learners like you, why reading books actually makes you smarter and drastically improve your English fluency. We think it's maybe the ultimate tool for personal growth, and language mastery too. We've structured this conversation really specifically for you, our fellow learner, someone committed to advanced English listening practice and maybe feeling stuck, wanting to move past those intermediate plateaus. Our mission today.
Well, first we'll dissect the science, how reading fundamentally changes your brain, your cognition. And then crucially, we'll give you the practical playbook. Actionable strategies, stuff you can use right away to harness that power to speak and write English with more confidence and precision.
And I'm definitely ready to jump into that research with you. I think the key thing to grasp right from the start is that reading isn't just, kicking back and relaxing. It's a profound neurological exercise. We'll be looking at two main pathways, kind of interconnected. First, the intellectual side, the actual cognitive boosts that make you smarter, enhancing both IQ and, importantly, EQ, your emotional intelligence. Second, the practical language part. How consistent, deliberate reading apps like the fastest software update for mastering English, grammar, vocabulary, even that natural rhythm of the language. We'll even touch on how this habit can literally alter your brain chemistry. It makes it one of the most effective learning strategies out there, really.
Okay, let's unpack that. Starting with the foundation of the science. It's like if the brain's this complex machine, reading is maybe the best kind of maintenance or maybe specialized training it can get. So what are the core cognitive functions that books really target and enhance, going beyond just, absorbing facts?
Well, the first and maybe most obvious benefit is boosting your vocabulary. But it's more than just words. It's developing verbal intelligence. That's your ability to actually use language effectively, to process complex stuff and articulate your thoughts really precisely. The common way people try to learn words. Rote memorization, flashcards with isolated words.
Oh yeah, the endless lists. You know the definition, maybe, but you haven't got a clue how to actually use the word naturally, or when, or even who uses it.
Exactly, precisely. Reading just elegantly solves that. When you bump into a word like, say, labyrinthine used to describe some dark, winding city street in a novel, your brain doesn't just get the dictionary definition. It absorbs the full context, the feeling, the semantic weight. It connects it to a vivid mental picture. That creates a much richer, denser neural pathway. That's contextual learning and just far, far better for actually remembering and using the word long term. And there's solid evidence for this. Large-scale studies tracking people over time, researchers found clear links, higher literacy rates correlated with, yes, more general knowledge, but specifically with improved verbal intelligence scores.
Verbal intelligence.
Yeah, the ability to reason effectively using language. Interestingly, these studies noted the improvement was really specific to those verbal skills. It didn't really change nonverbal reasoning abilities much. So if your goal, personally or professionally, is to articulate complex, subtle ideas, reading is probably the number one driver for building that skill.
That distinction is really interesting. Verbal versus nonverbal. So it's not just making you better at language, it's making you a better thinker in language.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
Yeah.
And this goes beyond just single words, right? It gets into the structure of language. Sentence complexity. Reading exposes your brain constantly to varied, often intricate sentence structures, syntax. When you read an author who crafts these long, elegant sentences with multiple clauses, your brain has to work. It has to sustain attention, hold those clauses in working memory to get the final meaning.
Right, you can't just skim that.
No, you really can't. It's a continuous mental workout, elevating your comprehension depth. And literary fiction especially, it demands even more. You have to actively infer meanings, guess character motivations, anticipate plot twists, connect dots across hundreds of pages. That's basically relentless critical thinking practice, just disguised as, enjoying a good story.
Okay, so verbal skill is one piece of intelligence. The other one, and maybe even more relevant today in professional settings, is emotional intelligence, EQ. How does sitting alone with a novel translate into being better with people in the real world? That seems like a jump.
It does seem like a jump, but this is where fiction becomes almost like a neurological cheat code for empathy. And I don't just mean feeling sorry for someone's sympathy, I mean building robust emotional intelligence. When you really immerse yourself in a novel, you're constantly exercising what neuroscientists call the theory of mind network.
Theory of mind.
Yeah, it's the brain mechanism we use to basically model other people's inner worlds, understanding their intentions, their beliefs, their feelings, even when they don't spell them out.
Ah, okay. So reading fiction is like running simulations of social interactions, but without any real-world awkwardness or risk.
That's an excellent analogy, yes. Studies confirm this reading literary fiction, especially stories driven by character and narrative, activates this theory of mind network intensely. Think about the mental effort it takes to suspend your disbelief, to truly step into a character's shoes, maybe experiencing the world through Scout's eyes or Hull. To Kill a Mockingbird, her confusion, her developing moral sense. That forces your brain to build really complex emotional understanding, complex schemas. And this simulation is powerful because good fiction mirrors real life's complexity. Characters have mixed motives, they contradict themselves. You have to process that ambiguity.
Just like real people.
Exactly. It's the ultimate empathy boot camp, in a way. This kind of deep reading experience literally rewires neural pathways. It makes readers significantly more attuned to social cues, nonverbal signals, the whole dynamic in real-world interactions.
That emotional edge sounds invaluable. Being able to better read a room, understand a client's unspoken frustration or a colleague's hesitation. That makes you way more effective. Leadership, negotiation, just building relationships.
Absolutely. It's intelligence applied socially. Okay, so moving on to pure cognitive function again. Focus and critical thinking. This is a big one today. We live in an environment basically engineered for distraction.
Totally. The constant notifications, the infinite scroll. It's the opposite of focus.
Precisely. Reading a complex, long book is a deliberate act against that tide. It demands sustained attention. It trains that critical cognitive muscle. You have to track multiple plot lines, maybe hold complex arguments in your head, analyze why characters do what they do, draw conclusions based on evidence spread throughout the book. These analytical processes hone critical thinking skills that are transferable. They apply just as much to writing a business plan or debugging code as they do to understanding a novel. And there's more. Reading seems to build mental resilience. Research links this kind of sustained intellectual activity to combating cognitive decline later in life. Avid readers consistently score higher on general intelligence measures, even ones that aren't directly about language skills. For example, wrestling with a dense historical account or a really intricate thriller sharpens pattern recognition, seeing connections between seemingly unrelated things. That's similar to solving advanced logic puzzles. It builds an overall framework for effective problem solving.
So the mental focus needed to follow, say, a complex political history strengthens the same parts of the brain you need to troubleshoot a technical problem at work.
That's certainly what the research suggests, yes. The underlying cognitive machinery is being exercised.
Okay, so what's actually happening chemically in the brain during this intense mental workout? We know physical exercise releases endorphins, but what about reading?
Great question. When you're deeply engaged in a book, your brain chemistry actually changes quite significantly. You trigger this positive cascade of neurochemicals. You get dopamine release when you successfully predict a plot twist or grasp a new concept. That's the pleasure and reward signal, making you want to keep going. Serotonin gets released too, which contributes to mood stability, helping you concentrate without feeling stressed, which can happen with other high-focus tasks. And yes, endorphins play a role too, contributing to a general sense of well-being and stress reduction.
So it actually feels good on a chemical level.
It does. This neurological reward system is likely why regular readers often report better memory, sharper insights, and feeling less stressed overall. Books stimulate multiple brain regions at once: visual cortex, language centers, emotional processing areas. It's a genuinely holistic cognitive workout.
Now, the perennial debate, print versus digital. If we're aiming for maximum cognitive benefit, does holding a physical book give you something scrolling on a screen doesn't?
It seems it does, in a pretty critical way. The research on comprehension depth is fairly clear here. Printed books tend to promote deeper understanding and better retention. A lot of this seems due to haptic cues and spatial memory.
Haptic cues, like the feel of it.
Yeah, the physical feel. The weight of the book, visually seeing your progress pile up on one side, the tangible act of turning a page. These physical sensations help anchor the information in your memory map. Your brain creates a kind of spatial layout of the text. Online reading, on the other hand, while fantastic for quick scanning and grabbing specific facts, tends to encourage a shallower processing style. The lack of fixed physical location, the continuous scroll, it often disrupts the brain's ability to build that stable mental map.
Okay, so maybe a balance is key, but for deep learning, print might have an edge.
I think that's a fair assessment. Both enhance intelligence, but for that deep, immersive cognitive workout, print or maybe very focused long-form digital reading without distractions seems better suited.
All right, final point on the science side, creativity and innovation. The world's big innovators, they're not just reading technical manuals, right?
Not at all. They're usually reading incredibly widely, synthesizing ideas. Fiction, with its world-building and what-if scenarios, pushes our boundaries, encourages lateral thinking. And nonfiction, especially things like history, biography, philosophy, it provides deep expertise, but also different ways of framing problems, divergent perspectives. Think about people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, known for being voracious, wide-ranging readers. They often credit their ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas, maybe linking aerospace engineering principles to business strategy, to the huge, varied knowledge base they built through reading. Reading essentially fills your mental toolbox with concepts and models. Then, sometimes spontaneously, those tools combine in new ways to create breakthroughs. Innovation.
That really sums up the intelligence boost nicely. Reading makes you more articulate, more emotionally intelligent, a sharper critical thinker, and creatively flexible. It's like an investment that just keeps compounding. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think, for our listeners, the language learners, people striving for that advanced English mastery. If the science we just talked about is like supercharging your mental hardware, and consistent reading feels like the definitive software update for English fluency, how does reading bridge that huge gap we all feel between passive knowledge, like knowing the grammar rules, and active use, actually speaking and writing confidently like a professional?
Yeah, this is critical. For non-native speakers especially, reading offers this total immersion in natural, idiomatic language that, frankly, no textbook can truly replicate. We mentioned building vocabulary and context before, but let's focus now on advanced retention for fluency. The key linguistic mechanism here is acquiring collocations and lexical chunks. Collocations, words that just naturally go together.
Exactly, like make a decision, not do a decision, or heavy rain, not strong rain. Textbooks might list these, but books show them used naturally in context thousands and thousands of times.
Right. That's the difference between knowing the word bewildered and instinctively knowing people usually say utterly bewildered or he looked bewildered.
Precisely. When you read extensively, you're not just memorizing words, you're training your brain on massive amounts of natural language data.
Yeah.
It's almost like how AI language models are trained in a way. This huge exposure to real written English, the corpus, linguists call it, lets you internalize these word pairings subconsciously. And that is absolutely transformative for fluency. Remember that learner who read 92 books? They weren't sitting there making flashcards for every collocation. They absorbed them, incidentally, naturally. This drastically cuts down on that hesitation, that searching for the right word that plagues intermediate speakers. The correct phrases start to deploy automatically when you speak or write.
Oh, that hesitation is just killer for fluency, isn't it? If you pause too long figuring out the grammar or the exact right word, the conversation has moved on. So this contextual learning kind of preloads the phrases.
It really does. And that leads directly into grammar and structure. Textbooks break grammar down into these neat, separate rules. A chapter on past perfect, another on conditionals, often quite dry. But skilled writers, they weave these rules seamlessly into complex, varied sentences. When you read widely, you're absorbing correct English grammar almost unconsciously. Your brain just starts recognizing the patterns, the underlying architecture, by seeing it executed perfectly again and again.
So instead of a rule book in your head, you're building more of an intuitive grammar database.
That's a perfect way to describe it, yes. And that intuition, that's the foundation of real fluency. Now, for active practice, reading aloud adds another layer. When you actually articulate a complex sentence structure out loud, you're physically training your mouth, your voice, to produce correct grammar. It reinforces those patterns and boosts spoken fluency. This intuitive grasp of sophisticated sentence structure is so important for speaking smoothly in real time without constantly running that internal grammar check in your head.
Let's talk about the listening aspect too, since this is advanced listening practice. How does reading, which feels visual, actually help our pronunciation and listening skills?
This is where we bring in the powerful synergy of dual input, combining the visual text with an audiobook. When you read the words on the page while listening to a skilled native narrator, you're training your ear for all those crucial elements of spoken English, the rhythm, the stress patterns, intonation, different accents. This significantly sharpens your listening comprehension, especially for faster or more complex speech.
Okay, that sounds like a really key step. Bridging that gap between reading English well and actually hearing and speaking it fluently.
It absolutely is. And reading aloud yourself is, I'd say, mandatory practice here, too. It forces you to confront the actual sounds, the phonetics of the language. You can't just skim over tricky pronunciations. You have to try and say them. Practicing reading aloud, maybe trying to mimic the narrator's cadence and intonation, improves your overall phonetic awareness. It helps ensure your speaking skills keep pace with your reading ability. It builds confidence and just makes you a much clearer, more effective communicator.
And the final piece, maybe the most important for sticking with it, motivation. Learning the language takes years. How does reading make that journey sustainable and, actually enjoyable?
Yeah, sustainability is everything. It comes from shifting learning from feeling like a chore to feeling like a pleasure. If you pick books you're genuinely interested in, whether that's sci-fi, history, cooking, whatever, you stay engaged naturally. It doesn't feel like studying. When learning feels like enjoyment, your motivation stays high, and that allows for the sustained practice you need to really accelerate fluency. Honestly, research suggests this kind of sustained, enjoyable input, just reading things you like, is genuinely the fastest way to acquire a huge vocabulary, absorb complex grammar, and build overall proficiency all at once. Reading becomes the catalyst.
Okay, so this raises the big question then. Knowing all these amazing benefits, how do we actually do it effectively? How do we shift from just casual reading to really active maximum gain reading? We've put together 10 sort of expanded tips, practical strategies tailored for you, the advanced learner, to really harness this power.
Right, we need the playbook.
Yep.
Practical stuff that turns the theory into an efficient daily habit. Let's start with probably the most common mistake people make: picking the wrong book. Tip number 1, absolutely fundamental. Choose books at the right level. This is crucial. If it's way too hard, you'll just get frustrated and stop. If it's too easy, you're not really learning much new, just practicing what you know. You need that sweet spot, stimulating, introducing new things, but not completely overwhelming.
Okay. How do you find that sweet spot? Is there a rule of thumb?
Yeah, a simple practical one is the 5-finger rule. Open a page, read it. If you hit more than, say, 5 or 6 words you absolutely don't know, the book's probably too difficult for fluency building right now. For beginners, maybe start with illustrated kids' books. Simple stories like The Very Hungry Caterpillar establish basic sentence structures. Intermediates, engaging young adult YA novels are often great contemporary language, interesting plots. Advanced learners can tackle classics, dense nonfiction, but the absolute key at any level is interest. Read what you genuinely want to read. And remember, consistency trumps intensity. 15 minutes of focused reading every day is way more effective for long-term learning than one heroic 4-hour session once a month.
That covers getting the level right, building confidence. Now, tip 2, we talked about reading aloud, but how do we make it a real fluency drill?
Okay, tip 2, read aloud specifically for pronunciation practice. Focus hard on how you sound. And the trick here is the shadow reading technique. Get the audiobook version of your book professionally narrated. Put headphones on, play the audio, and read the text aloud at the same time, trying to match the narrator's speed, rhythm, intonation, even their accent, as closely as possible.
Shadowing. So you're literally talking along with them.
Exactly. Simultaneously. This dual input, seeing the word, hearing it pronounced perfectly, and trying to replicate it immediately, it dramatically sharpens your listening and massively improves your spoken delivery. It forces that connection between the written word and the correct sound.
Okay, and what about just understanding what we read? Tip 3, we zone out, we speed read.
Tip 3 is about focused comprehension or deep reading. This is vital for those cognitive games we talked about earlier. Instead of just letting your eyes skim the page, try this. Read a challenging paragraph or section, then close the book, put it down, and try to summarize the main point or the plot development entirely from memory, out loud, or in writing. This active recall forces your brain to process deeply and fights that shallow skimming habit we get from screens.
Right. Okay, makes sense. Now, vocabulary. We're hitting new words constantly. Tip 4. How do we actively capture and retain those words so they move from just passive recognition to something we can actually use?
Tip 4, build vocabulary actively and contextually. Don't just look it up and move on. First, always try to use context clues to guess the meaning. Make your brain work a bit. Then, when you do look it up, don't just write the word and definition. Write down the entire original sentence from the book where you found it.
Keep the context.
Keep the context. It embeds the word in its natural habitat. Then, maybe make flashcards, but use those actual book quotes on the cards. This ties the new word back to a specific, vivid, memorable moment in the story or argument. Way higher chance of recall and correct usage later.
That makes it a usable tool, not just an abstract definition. Okay, tip 8 was about engaging more actively. Annotating.
Yes, tip 8, annotation and engagement. Reading passively is just less effective. Get involved. Highlight key phrases you like, maybe underline examples of great sentence structure you want to emulate, and critically scribble notes in the margins, summarize sections in your own words, ask questions of the author, challenge their arguments. This forces deeper understanding, turns reading into a conversation, not just receiving information.
And applying that knowledge. Tip 5 mentioned discussion.
Right, tip 5. Discuss what you read. Knowledge fades fast if you don't use it. That goes for facts and new language skills. You have to activate it. Join a book club if you can, or an online forum. Even just commit to summarizing the plot or the main idea out loud to a friend, your cat, yourself on a walk. It doesn't matter. This forced retrieval, forced application really cements things. When you have to actually use that new vocabulary or try out a complex sentence structure in real time, it solidifies your learning and boosts your confidence like crazy.
Good point. We also need variety, right, to cover all bases. That was tip 6.
Tip 6, read diverse genres. Build linguistic versatility. Don't just read novels or only business books. Mix it up rigorously. Fiction trains you in descriptive language, narrative flow, emotional nuance, the language of storytelling, connection. Nonfiction exposes you to technical terms, logical arguments, formal structures, language of reports, debates, professional life. Reading widely ensures you're comfortable navigating different kinds of conversations, from casual chat to a formal presentation.
Okay, and sometimes rereading can be good. That was tip 9. Feels counterintuitive.
Tip 9, reread strategically. Yeah, it feels like you should always be on to the next new thing, but revisiting a book, especially one you found challenging or well-written, can be incredibly beneficial. The second time through, you're not struggling just to understand the plot or basic meaning. Your focus shifts. You start noticing the style, the structure, the subtle word choices. This really solidifies grammar patterns and deepens your appreciation for sophisticated language. It helps turn that passive understanding into active knowledge you can use.
And finally, tracking progress. It can feel intangible, getting smarter or more fluent. Tips of 7-10.
Exactly. You need concrete ways to see you're improving. Tip 7. Set quantifiable goals. Use an app like Goodreads to track books read, or just set up personal target pages per week, books per month. Goals create momentum. And tip 10. Reflect and monitor progress. This is about seeing the change. Maybe record yourself reading a tricky passage aloud today. Then do the same passage in 6 months and compare the recordings. Or keep a journal. Look back at an email or essay you wrote 6 months ago versus one you write now. Noticing those specific improvements, smoother speech, better word choice, more complex sentences is incredibly motivating. It proves the system works.
Okay, so we have the science, we have the playbook of tips. Let's get to the proof. What does this look like in the real world? We've got stories, right? From titans of industry to everyday learners who genuinely transform things just by reading.
Yeah, the absolute classic example linking reading to high-level strategic thinking has to be Warren Buffett. His reading habit isn't just a quirky detail, it's fundamental to how he operates.
Tell us more about that commitment. People know he reads, but maybe not the extent or the why.
Well, he famously aims for around 500 pages a day. Mostly wide-ranging nonfiction annual reports, biographies, economic history, newspapers. He calls it accumulating compound knowledge, like compound interest. For Buffett, reading isn't just research for the next investment. It's about building this incredibly deep, broad cognitive framework. It allows him to see patterns, understand industries, and spot long-term strategic opportunities that others miss.
So it wasn't just about picking stocks, it was about deep understanding.
Exactly. His reading directly built that unparalleled financial acumen and the critical long-term thinking needed to steer Berkshire Hathaway successfully through decades of market ups and downs. It's tangible proof that broad, deep reading sharpens strategic intelligence at the highest level.
And we see similar dedication, maybe not 500 pages, but a serious commitment from top tech leaders too, right? People shaping the future.
We do. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, had those public annual reading challenges aiming for a book every 2 weeks, often focusing on big picture stuff: history, philosophy, culture, social dynamics. Again, this wasn't just about gathering facts, it clearly sharpened his strategic thinking. You can see how that kind of reading might influence major shifts, like Meta's big pivot towards virtual reality and understanding online social behavior more deeply. They use reading as a deliberate tool, not just a hobby, to anticipate the future and guide their strategy.
Okay, beyond business acumen, what about the emotional intelligence side, that EQ boost? Brené Brown is a great example here, isn't she?
Oh, absolutely. Her work on vulnerability, shame, courage, it resonated globally. Think of her TED Talk, her books like The Gifts of Imperfection. Where did that come from? It came from her immersing herself deeply in research, sociology, psychology, narrative theory, mostly through reading dense academic texts and personal stories. Her unique ability to synthesize these complex ideas, articulate subtle emotional truths, and create these accessible frameworks for understanding ourselves that originated in massive amounts of reading. Connecting disparate threads of human experience, her success really showcases reading's power to boost EQ and effectively communicate complex psychological insights.
And then the personal transformations. We mentioned Lainey earlier, who focused on fiction.
Right. Lainey's story really highlights the power of literary fiction for personal EQ growth. She explicitly said that reading complex characters grappling with their motivations and flaws shaped my empathy. It forced her to confront different perspectives, building her emotional literacy. And crucially, this wasn't just theoretical insight. It translated directly into better relationships at work and home, making her a more effective team member, ultimately helping her career. Fiction was her masterclass in understanding people.
And back to our core audience, language learners.
Yeah.
That story of the person reading 92 books, that's just incredible proof for fluency, isn't it?
It really is perhaps the most compelling proof of the fluency fast-track idea. This individual went from that common stage of hesitant, halting speech, knowing the rules but struggling to apply them smoothly, to genuinely fluent, confident conversations. And this transformation was powered almost entirely by the sheer volume of immersion that extensive reading provided. Those incidental vocabulary gains, the subconscious grammar absorption, learning natural phrases and chunks, it all came together. It confirms that reading isn't just one part of learning. For many, it could be the single most powerful catalyst for a rapid surge in real-world language proficiency. They effectively used books as their personal immersion environment.
Okay, let's just quickly tie some specific book examples back to the gains one last time. If I pick up, say, Harry Potter, what specific benefit am I getting beyond just enjoying the story?
Okay, Harry Potter. You're constantly encountering natural phrases in exciting contexts. Maybe a flurry of activity during a Quidditch match, or someone described as utterly bewildered after a spell goes wrong. The drama of the scene helps lock bewildered in your memory far better than a dictionary entry. And you learn it often pairs with utterly and describes confusion. You absorb the usage, not just the definition.
Makes sense. And for EQ, using that To Kill a Mockingbird example again.
Right. To Kill a Mockingbird forces you into Scout's innocent perspective, witnessing profound injustice, or maybe Atticus's principled stand. It compels emotional processing, deepening your understanding of things like prejudice, courage, morality, far beyond what a factual summary ever could. It builds empathy through experience.
And for a pure fluency drill, using tip 2, reading aloud.
Maybe tackling a chapter of The Great Gatsby aloud. F. Scott Fitzgerald's prose is famously elegant, complex. Reading it aloud forces you to practice sophisticated sentence structures, precise vocabulary, rhythm. Recording yourself doing it, as per the tip, lets you hear where your rhythm or intonation might be off compared to a native speaker, allowing systematic improvement. It's a tough but effective drill.
And finally, critical thinking and applying the knowledge. Tip 5, discussion.
Okay, imagine reading a book like 1984, debating its themes, surveillance, truth, power with a book club, or even just writing a response in an online forum. That's the ultimate active application. You have to deploy the vocabulary related to totalitarianism or propaganda. You have to structure complex arguments. You have to critically engage with Orwell's ideas using the language you've absorbed. It cements both the intellectual insights and your linguistic ability to express them. These examples really show reading isn't passive. It's active engagement for integrated growth.
Wow. Okay, that really brings everything full circle. Reading books is clearly this incredibly powerful, multi-layered investment in yourself. It delivers this huge, multifaceted boost to your overall intelligence sharpening EQ, critical thinking, while simultaneously being this amazing accelerator for your English fluency, building vocabulary, internalizing grammar, gaining that conversational confidence.
And what's truly fascinating, I think, is just how accessible this power is. The main barrier is just carving out the time and, choosing that first right book for you. But consistency, that really is the secret ingredient. We strongly, strongly encourage you, if you're listening, to actually implement those tips we shared. Start today. Pick an accessible book you're excited about. Try shadow reading with an audiobook. Actively discuss what you read. Move those words from the page into your active vocabulary. Honestly, every single page you turn is a real demonstrable step towards a sharper mind and a much more articulate, confident voice in English.
So we'll leave you with this final thought, something to mull over for your own learning journey. What's the next book you're going to choose? Not just to read for pleasure, but with the intention to fundamentally transform your mind or supercharge your English fluency. Take that step. Choose that book today.
We really enjoy sharing these deep dives into learning strategies and language mastery with you. If you found this discussion helpful, particularly for your advanced English listening practice and your overall learning journey, please do us a favor. Please like this video, share it with others who might benefit, and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss future episodes.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on just one thing, a really powerful tool for growth. Reading, specifically reading books, long-form content. Our mission really is to show you why actually committing to a book, fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter which, is probably the ultimate way to make you fundamentally smarter.
Right.
And crucially for you, the learner, how it can drastically speed up your English fluency.
Yeah, and look, we get the challenge. We're living in this world just dominated by fragments, right? Digital media, quick scrolls, those little bite-sized videos.
Exactly. Information overload.
Yeah, information in these chaotic bursts. And that whole environment, it sort of trains our attention spans for distraction, not for depth.
It really does. But the research we've pulled together, it suggests the antidote involves, slowing down, committing to that sustained focus you only really get from long-form reading. And this deep dive, it's specifically for you, the serious learner. Someone who's committed to pushing past those frustrating intermediate plateaus in English and really aiming for advanced mastery.
So we've kind of mapped this out along two paths. They're deeply connected, of course. First, there's the intellectual side, how reading fundamentally changes your brain, boosting both verbal intelligence, a key part of IQ, and, interestingly, emotional intelligence, or EQ.
Okay, brain changes. Right. And the second path.
The second is the really practical language side, how reading done consistently and deliberately acts like the fastest software update for your English.
Oh, software update, I like that.
Yeah, for mastering grammar, internalizing just tons of usable vocabulary, and really absorbing the natural rhythm and flow of the language.
Okay, let's start with that cognitive boost then, the brain side.
Right. So reading isn't just, passively soaking up facts. It's a profound neurological exercise. If you're serious about becoming a better thinker, honestly, this is the gym for your brain.
The brain gym, okay. And the first benefit people usually think of is vocabulary, right? But you're saying it goes deeper.
Oh, much deeper. It's really about developing verbal intelligence, that complex skill of processing nuance, handling lots of information, and being able to articulate subtle thoughts precisely.
Which is different from just memorizing words.
Totally different. A lot of people try flashcards, right?
Yeah.
Or isolated definitions, just rote memorization.
Yeah, I've done that. It doesn't always stick.
Exactly. That approach often fails for true fluency. Because you might know the definition, but you have zero intuition for how to use the word naturally.
Right.
Now, contrast that with contextual learning. Imagine you encounter a word, say, labyrinth, used in a novel to describe some dark, winding city street.
Okay.
Your brain doesn't just log the dictionary definition, it absorbs the whole package.
Huh.
The semantic weight, the feeling, the surrounding grammar, everything.
So the context embeds it much more deeply.
Precisely. That creates a far richer, denser neural pathway. And the studies on this are quite clear. Researchers have found a really strong link between high literacy rates and specifically improved verbal intelligence scores.
Verbal intelligence specifically.
Yeah, what's fascinating is how targeted this seems to be. The improvement shown in studies was pretty focused on verbal skills. It didn't significantly boost, say, nonverbal reasoning abilities nearly as much.
Interesting.
So if your goal, professionally or personally, is to articulate complex, subtle ideas clearly in English, well, reading is the definitive driver for building that specific skill.
So it's making you a better thinker in the language, not just better at the language.
You got it. Think about reading an author who uses long, elegant sentences, maybe with multiple clauses.
That can be challenging.
It forces your brain into this continuous mental workout, right?
Yeah.
You have to hold all those pieces in your working memory, link them logically just to get the final meaning. That builds serious mental stamina for complex analysis.
Like flexing a muscle.
Exactly like flexing a muscle. In literary fiction, that takes it even further. It demands constant critical thinking. You're inferring motivations, guessing what might happen next, connecting little clues across hundreds of pages.
So it's like solving a puzzle.
It's critical thinking disguised as pure enjoyment. It's a deliberate act against today's environment, which is basically engineered for distraction. It builds mental resilience.
Okay, speaking of enjoyment and maybe something less obvious, emotional intelligence, EQ. How does sitting alone with a book possibly make you better with actual people? It sounds a bit counterintuitive.
It does, but fiction is arguably a neurological cheat code for empathy. Seriously. When you immerse yourself in a story, you're constantly exercising what scientists call the theory of mind network.
Theory of mind. What's that exactly?
It's the brain mechanism we use to basically model other people's inner worlds, understanding their intentions, their beliefs, their feelings, even when they're contradictory or not explicitly stated.
Ah, okay. So reading fiction is like running simulations, social simulations.
That's a great way to put it. Sophisticated simulations of social interactions, but without any real-world risk if you get it wrong.
The ultimate empathy boot camp, maybe.
Definitely. Think about the mental gymnastics involved in stepping into a character's shoes. Maybe a complex character or someone totally unlike you, like seeing the world through Scout's eyes in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right, you feel her confusion, her dawning understanding.
Exactly. Good fiction reflects life's messiness, mixed motives, internal contradictions, ambiguity. Processing all that directly translates into being more attuned in real life. You get better at reading a room, understanding why a client seems hesitant, or even anticipating what a colleague might do next.
It's a huge advantage, a real emotional edge. Now, we've talked brain workout. What about the format? Physical books versus ebooks. Is there a real difference? I mean, research suggests print helps with memory because of touch, physical location on the page.
Yeah, the haptic cues and spatial memory thing.
Right. So are those of us using e-readers, maybe for cost or convenience, actually missing out?
That's a really important question. And yeah, some research does suggest print might have an edge for deep recall. Your brain creates this kind of mental map. And you remember that key quote was like bottom left on a right-hand page.
Yeah, do that.
Right. But look, for digital readers, the key isn't to ditch the device. It's to mitigate the distraction factor. That's the real enemy.
How do you mean?
Turn off the notifications. Use a dedicated e-ink reader if possible, not a tablet buzzing with alerts. The goal is just to avoid that shallow processing that comes from constant scrolling and interruptions. Deep, sustained attention is the goal, whatever the format.
Makes sense. Focus is key. And connecting this back to creativity, you mentioned reading widely fills a mental toolbox.
Absolutely it does. When you read across different genres, history, science, biography, fiction, you're accumulating compound knowledge, like Buffett says.
Compound knowledge.
Yeah. And this allows for lateral thinking. Suddenly, you might connect something you read about, say, aerospace engineering last month to a business strategy problem you're facing today. That ability to see unexpected patterns, make those leaps, that's where real innovation often comes from.
Okay, that covers the hardware upgrade, the brain changes. Let's shift to the software, the language mechanics. For the learner really striving for that advanced English, this is where things can speed up dramatically, right?
Oh, absolutely critical. This is how you move beyond textbook English. Reading gives you total, sustained immersion in natural, idiomatic language. Textbooks teach rules in isolation. Reading teaches you how the language lives.
And the key mechanism is?
It's acquiring collocations and lexical chunks.
Okay, unpack lexical chunks for us. What exactly are those from a linguistic view?
Sure. They're basically groups of words that native speakers just automatically use together. They feel right. We don't say do a mistake, we say make a mistake.
Right. Or heavy rain, not strong rain.
Yeah, exactly. Heavy rain, torrential rain, make a decision, take a chance. When you read extensively, you're essentially training your brain on massive amounts of this natural language data. Linguists call it the corpus.
So your brain starts recognizing these patterns subconsciously?
Precisely. You internalize these pairings without even trying. And that drastically cuts down on the hesitation, that awkward pausing that often plagues intermediate speakers who are trying to build sentences word by word.
That makes so much sense. It becomes more automatic.
Yes. And that leads straight into intuitive grammar. Think about skilled writers. They weave grammar rules seamlessly into their prose. You don't see the rules, you just see effective communication.
You just feel it sounds right.
Exactly. When you absorb lots of high-quality English through reading, you slowly bypass the need to constantly run internal grammar checks based on rules you memorized ages ago. You build this internal, intuitive grammar database that just knows what sounds right. That feeling, that's the bedrock of real fluency.
Okay, but reading is visual. How does that help with listening and speaking, the auditory side? You mentioned dual input.
Right. The synergy there is incredibly powerful. If you combine reading the visual text with listening to an audiobook version simultaneously.
Like shadow reading.
Well, shadow reading is one technique, yeah. But just listening while reading trains your ear for all those crucial things that trip learners up. The rhythm of English, stress patterns within sentences, natural pauses, intonation. It sharpens your listening comprehension dramatically.
And actually reading aloud.
Reading aloud forces the physical training. Your mouth, your tongue, they practice forming the sounds and reinforcing those complex grammar patterns you're seeing and hearing. It bridges the visual and the auditory.
Okay, one last piece before we get practical.
Yeah.
Sustainability. Learning a language is a long haul, a marathon. How does reading help people stick with it?
This is maybe the most important part for long-term success. Sustainability comes when you shift learning from feeling like a chore to being a genuine pleasure.
Finding books you actually want to read.
Exactly. If the book itself is gripping, whether it's sci-fi, history, a thriller, whatever floats your boat, your motivation stays high naturally, that's sustained, enjoyable input. Honestly, it's the fastest way to soak up a huge vocabulary, absorb complex grammar, and accelerate your proficiency, all without feeling like you're studying.
Love it. Okay, we've got the why the brain benefits, the language mechanics. Now let's get practical. How do you turn reading into this supercharger? Let's dive into some actionable strategies. You've got 7 tips for us.
Yep. 7 key tips for maximum gain reading. Strategy 1 is absolutely foundational. Choose the right level and something you're interested in.
Right level is key. How do you judge that? You mentioned the 5-finger rule.
Yeah, it's a simple guideline. Open the book to any page and read it. Hold up a finger for every word you don't know well enough to understand the sentence's basic meaning. If you hit 5 or 6 fingers on one page, for fluency building right now, yes, it's probably too difficult. You'll get bogged down looking things up. Save that book for later, for focus study. For fluency building, you want that sweet spot where you understand maybe 95% or more.
So you can just keep the flow going.
Exactly. And consistency trumps everything. 15 minutes of focus reading daily is way, way more effective than one heroic 4-hour session once a month.
Okay, tip 1, right level, right interest, be consistent. Tip 2.
Tip 2 is a powerful technique, especially for pronunciation and flow. Shadow reading.
We touched on this. How does it work exactly?
Get the audiobook for the book you're reading. Put on headphones. Read the text aloud, trying to speak at the exact same time as the narrator. Match their speed, their rhythm, their intonation as closely as you can.
So you're literally mimicking a native speaker's delivery in real time.
Precisely. You do this repeatedly, and that natural delivery starts to become second nature for you, too. It's amazing for fluency.
Okay, shadow reading. Tip 3.
Tip 3 is about going deep, fighting the urge to skim. Active recall.
How does that work?
Simple, but effective. Read a section, maybe a paragraph or a page, especially if it's challenging. Then close the book. Physically close it. And try to summarize the main point out loud or jot it down purely from memory.
Forces you to process it, not just let your eyes glide over the words.
Exactly. It forces deep processing. It makes sure you actually understood it.
Got it. Tip 4 sounds like it's about vocabulary.
It is. Contextual vocabulary. When you hit a new word, first, make your brain work. Try to guess the meaning from the context before you reach for the dictionary.
Okay, engage the brain first.
Right. Then, when you do look it up, don't just write down the definition. Write down the entire original sentence from the book where you found the word.
Why the whole sentence?
Because it embeds the word in its natural habitat. You see how it's used, the words it hangs out with. This turns it from an isolated fact into a usable tool in your own speaking and writing.
Smart. Okay, tip 5.
Tip 5. Activate the knowledge through discussion. Learning is sticky when you use it.
Talk about the book.
Yeah. Join a book club, even an online one. Or just make a point to summarize the plot or discuss the main ideas with a friend, a language partner, your cat, even just yourself out loud.
Talking to the cat counts.
Hey, whatever works. The point is the forced retrieval. Having to actually use the new vocabulary and grammar structures you've encountered, especially under a little bit of social pressure, solidifies the learning like nothing else. It massively boosts your confidence for real conversations.
Makes sense. Use it or lose it. Tip 6.
Read diverse genres. Don't get stuck in one rut. Mix it up.
Fiction and nonfiction.
Definitely. Literary fiction is great for descriptive language, emotional nuance, understanding character. Nonfiction history, science, articles exposes you to more technical terms, formal structures, different ways of arguing.
So you become more versatile.
Exactly. You build linguistic versatility. You get comfortable navigating different kinds of conversations and texts.
Excellent. And the last one, tip 7.
Reread strategically. Don't just read a book once and put it away forever, especially if it was challenging or particularly well written.
Why reread?
Because the second time through, your focus shifts. The first time, you were probably focused on just understanding the plot, the basic meaning.
Right. What happens next?
The second time, you already know what happens. So now your brain is free to notice how the author does things. You start noticing subtle word choices, the structure of sentences, clever use of grammar, the overall style. This really cements those advanced patterns unconsciously.
Fascinating. Okay, that's a really practical playbook. Let's quickly touch on some real-world proof. Does this stuff actually work for high achievers? Warren Buffett comes to mind.
Yeah, the classic example. He famously reads for hours a day, aiming for 500 pages, apparently. Mostly nonfiction, annual reports, history. He calls it accumulating compound knowledge.
Compound knowledge again.
It's that massive, varied knowledge base that lets him spot patterns, see long-term strategic opportunities that people just drowning in daily news snippets completely miss. It's strategic intelligence built through reading.
And for EQ, emotional intelligence.
Think about someone like Brené Brown. Her incredibly insightful work on vulnerability, shame, courage that didn't come out of nowhere. It came from deep immersion in academic research, yes, but also in thousands of personal stories. Reading allowed her to synthesize these complex psychological ideas and communicate subtle emotional truths with real clarity and depth.
Right, translating complex feelings into understandable concepts.
Exactly. And for pure language acceleration, you hear these stories like the anecdotal 92-book learner, someone who went from really hesitant, halting English to genuinely fluent, confident conversation, almost entirely driven by the sheer volume of extensive reading they did.
Wow.
It just confirms the power of picking up vocabulary incidentally, naturally, and absorbing grammar subconsciously through massive input.
So just to tie a bow on this with specific examples, if you read, say, Harry Potter,
you're absorbing loads of common collocations in a natural context. Things like flurry of activity or utterly bewildered, they just sink in.
and if you tackle something more complex, like The Great Gatsby, maybe using that shadow reading technique,
you're actively training your mouth and ear for sophisticated sentence structures, precise vocabulary, that elegant prose style.
and if you read a book like 1984 and then actually discuss its themes, surveillance, propaganda, doublethink,
You're forcing yourself to deploy advanced vocabulary and construct complex arguments. You're cementing the language skills right alongside the intellectual insights. It's a double win.
amazing. So summing up then,
Look, reading is just an incredibly powerful, multi-layered investment. It gives you this huge, multifaceted boost to your overall intelligence, sharpening critical thinking, boosting EQ, and at the very same time, it's arguably the single most efficient accelerator for your English fluency.
building that vocabulary, that grammar intuition, that conversational confidence.
All of it.
And the best part, maybe, is that this power is accessible to everyone, right? The real barrier isn't talent, it's consistency. It's choosing that first right book and using some of these strategies.
Absolutely. Every page you turn, genuinely, is a step towards a sharper mind and a more articulate voice in English. We really hope you'll try implementing some of these tips, starting today.
Okay, so what does all this mean for you listening right now? We want to leave you with a final thought, something provocative for your own learning journey. When you look at your bookshelf or your Kindle or whatever library you use, What's the next book you're going to choose? Not just for escape or entertainment, but with a specific conscious intention to fundamentally transform your mind or to seriously accelerate your language mastery.
Which book will it be?
Take that step. Choose that book today.